Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to the Ramadan program at Johns Hopkins University, sponsored by the Johns Hopkins University Muslim Association in association with the program in Islamic Studies, in association with the Center for Religious and Spiritual Life, where I serve as the Assistant Chaplain for Muslim Life at Johns Hopkins University. We have a program that has really galvanized our community and allowed us to find blessing and benefit in community this month of Ramadan. And we've had really stellar presentations, really stellar, not just lectures, but things that have been thought-provoking, given us a new way to look at the Quran and look at the benefit and the value of the month of Ramadan. And so what we want to do is continue in that vein. And we have one of our incoming event co-chairs, Aya Fadullah. She is going to introduce our speaker for this evening. Again, welcome to the program. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum, Ramadan Mubarak, everyone. My name is Ayat and I'm an events co-chair. Our speaker tonight is Dawud Walid. He is currently the executive director of the Michigan chapter of the Council on American and Islamic Relations and a senior has studied under qualified scholars the disciplines of Arabic grammar and morphology, foundations of Islamic jurisprudence, and sciences of the exegesis of the Quran. He previously served as an Imam at Masjid Wali Muhammad in Detroit and the Bosnian American Islamic Center. He is the author of the book Towards Sacred Activism, co-author of the book Centering Black Narrative, Black Muslim Nobles Among the Early Pious Muslims and Centering Black Narrative, Ahl al-Bayt, Blackness in Africa, and authors of essays in the 2012 book All American and 2014 book Quran in Conversation. He has lectured at over 100 institutions of higher learning in North America, Great Britain, and West Africa about Islam and social justice. He has also been interviewed in, quote, New York Times, Wall Street Journal, Jazeera. He has also received awards of recognition from the city councils of Detroit and Hamtramck, and from the mayor of Lansing, as well as a number of other religious and community organizations. Welcome.
Brothers and sisters in Islam, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Hamdan kathiran tayyiban mubarakan fih. Wa afdalu salati wa atammu taslim ala sayyidina wa nabiyyina wa maulana Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala wa amma ba'du. Thumma yaqulu Allahu azza wa jal في القرآن يا أيها الذين آمنوا كتب عليكم الصيام كما كتب على الذين من قبلكم لعلكم تتقون صدق الله العلي العظيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. Brothers and sisters in Islam, it's a pleasure to be with you this evening and an honor on this ninth night of the blessed month of Ramadan, the month in which the Quran was revealed, the month of Rahmah, the month of Maghfirah, and the month of salvation from the fires of sin. And may Allah Azza wa Jal spare us all the chastisement of the hellfire that is filled with sinful men and women and stones. So I was given the topic in terms of fasting and its relationship to guarding the vision or guarding the sight as well as guarding hearing. And I'm not totally sure about what was covered. Hamza Abdul Malik al-Azhari, may Allah preserve him, gave a talk on the inner dimensions of fasting. And perhaps some of this may be a little, you didn't hear his talk, then this was something you didn't hear a night or two ago. But nonetheless, remembrance or dhikr brings tranquility. Reminders of remembrance helps us no matter how much we hear things. Sometimes it can take on a new light for us depending on our how or our spiritual state, how it is during the day. So many of the scholars of the spiritual sciences of Islam or the inward disciplines, some call this tazkiyah or tasawwuf or irfan. There's different names that people would use. That of fasting, and this was discussed by Ibn Qudama al-Maqdisi, a great scholar of the Hanbali school of thought, Abu Hamid al-Ghazali, the Shafi'i scholar, well known in his Ihya al-Ulumuddin, has written about this, as well as other scholars have written about this issue. And two of the issues relating to the inward fast is the guarding of the vision and also the guarding of the ears during the time of fasting. Now, Allah Azza wa Jal has told us in the Quran that He ordered fasting for us, or prescribed or ordered. So we do our fasting firstly out of ta'ah, or out of obedience. It's not for any residual effects such as, well, I may lose some weight by fasting. My blood pressure will go down, or things like this. These are residual residual benefits that could take place from fasting. Although some of my time in the Muslim world, I know Imam probably knows this as well, is that there are actually people who sometimes even gain weight during the month of Ramadan. They stuck to the very superficial or surface level of the ahkam, but miss something else and overindulge when the sun goes down, and people end up gaining a lot of weight in certain Muslim countries in particular during the month of Ramadan. And we should stay away from overindulging, especially is al-imsak, which means restraint in the Arabic language. This is one of the definitions of fasting. So the Prophet Sallallahu Amana, he said that hearing is an amana. Our hearing is an amana. It's a trust that we've been given, and we have to fulfill this trust properly. And likewise, our sight is also a trust that we've been proper ways, or in the proper matter. And this especially holds true that in our fasting out of obedience, part of this obedience is supposed to raise us up, to instill in us and raise in us a taqwa, in Surah Al-Baqarah, that we fast, la'alakum tattaqun. And part of this taqwa is Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, one of the great, most knowledgeable, one of the 4 or 5 most knowledgeable of the Sahaba. May Allah be pleased with the pious companions of our Prophet alayhi salam. He defined what this taqwa is, of having proper thoughts. In this definition, the first part he says is to obey and not to disobey, right? And then to remember and not forget, and then to be grateful or show gratitude and not be ungrateful. And when all of these aspects are brought together and we are living, embodying this, then this is the definition he gave as having proper taqwa for Allah as he rightfully deserves. And this caution relates to our sight as well as our hearing. So we don't want to be involved in just abstaining ourselves from food and drink and sexual relations from dawn to dusk, but then break the spirit of our fast by not guarding our eyes properly as well as our ears. So let's go into a few of these aspects relating to guarding the eyes and as well as the ears. So firstly, it is that we should guard our eyes from looking at that in person, or it could be on TV, on our computers, on our smartphones. That's what can be considered to be lewd and or unbecoming, when we could have what is told by the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when we could commit the zina or the fornication of the eyes, when we have a lustful glance at the opposite gender. So Allah Azza wa Jal said in the 24th chapter of the Quran, and he mentions this for men and for women. In the 24th surah, the 30th and 31st verses, or ayatain, the 2 signs. كل المؤمنين يغضوا من أبصارهم ويحفظوا فروجهم ذلك أزكى لهم إن الله خبير بما يصنعون. So Allah Azza wa Jal says, say to the people, O Prophet, tell the believing men to lower their gaze. وَيَحْفَظُونَ فُرُوجَهُمْ, and guard their private parts. So see, we have a connection here between the gaze and guarding the gaze, and also taming our lusts. Conversely speaking, if we don't guard our gaze and look at people, if we look at people too long or glance at people too long with the eye of desire, then this will inflame passions further. This will inflame passions further and may cause us to then take that that sight further and then try to make it operational through speech, to call towards that which is unbecoming during the fasting hours, or ultimately making it operational with our private parts. So part of the aspect of keeping the fast is that we lower our gaze. And this is for the brothers, firstly, in this ayah. And that is azka. Dhalika azka lahum. That is pure for them, those who lower their gaze. And surely Allah is all-knowing or is all acquainted of what they do. So this is what Allah Azza wa Jal says specifically regarding this issue of lowering the gaze. So this relates to men. And as I mentioned before, firstly, this is in person, but also could be watching TV. It could also be on the computer. So we've taken, in our society, I believe that we've been desensitized a lot. And perhaps sheltering in place is actually helping us during this month of Ramadan right now, where we go on the street or we look at TV, even something like the NBA Finals, and the basketball players come on, and then the cheerleaders come on at certain times, and then we start looking at the cheerleaders or things such as that, in which we shouldn't be looking at people of the opposite gender with a lustful gaze, but we shouldn't be looking at them at all or lowering our gaze or turning away, or at least trying to somewhat blur our perception when their aura is not covered up properly, which we're going to get to in a moment in the next ayah, right? And likewise, brothers, in regards to this lowering our gaze, we should also be protecting ourselves from the gaze of others, which means we should be dressing appropriately and covering our aura as well, just in general in public. Now, some people who are males have shahwa or have passions for the same gender. And this goes likewise if anyone is struggling with the lustful eye of the same general gender. So this is something that is general, relating to looking at someone of the opposite gender, that would inflame or bring up shahwa. Now, in regards to, well, what about if I'm married? What about if I'm married? So we know that JHUMA, or sexual relations between husband and wife, we know that's lawful. The other 11 months of the year, as long as the female has ritual purity for the month of Ramadan, but we know that from dawn to dusk, that this is haram, that which is normally halal is haram from dawn to dusk during Ramadan. But once the sun goes down, a person can have relations with their mate. But what about if one is married, but what about, say, looking at your wife that maybe is that is changing her clothes or something like that? Likewise, during the month of Ramadan, it is not forbidden to look at your wife while she is not fully dressed, or maybe not dressed at all, for your gaze. And Imam Ghazali even goes to the point, and this is even outside of the month of Ramadan, this is his opinion, but that a man should not even look at the genitalia of his wife. This is his opinion. But definitely it shouldn't be done or private fasting hours. So that is something that we should also lower our gaze and not avert our gaze during the fasting hours, so that we can hafadhu furujahum, so that we can guard our private parts and not get aroused fast all of these days consecutively to make up for that act of disobedience of being caught up with our shahwa. And we seek refuge with Allah from that. Now, the second point is, now this was addressing the brothers. Now, the same thing is commanded for sisters, but there's an extra point. I allude to it with the brothers, but it is very specific, and it is two imperative commands that come afterwards, right? And before I go any further with this, is that Allah Azza wa Jal created this creation with mizan, with balance. And he put feminine principles in creation and masculine principles in creation. And these balance each other out. Just like in his Al-Asma'ul Husna, his beautiful names, there are Jamali names and Jalali names. There are beautiful names And then there are names that are majestic, that show Allah, like his power. So for instance, Ar-Rahim is a Jamali name, and Ar-Rahma in the Arabic language is a word, compassion, loving compassion, mercy, that is considered to be more of a Jamali, or hence a more of a feminine quality, even though men are supposed to be compassionate as well. But this is more of a Jamali attribute, right? Likewise, El-Qahar or El-Jabbar, right, is the one who compels, the one who enforces. Allah Azza wa Jal, this is a Jalali characteristic, right? So there are certain attributes and leanings that Allah Azza wa Jal gave men in general, certain leanings in certain things more so than women in certain things, and likewise, women have certain leanings in their fitrah more so than men, and when both of these come together, the Jalali and the Jamali, and then we have balance, or we have Kamal, we can come to a level of perfection. So in saying this, and so I have to explain this, there's certain things that men are commanded to do in the Quran that aren't incumbent on women, and likewise there are certain things on women that are commanded that aren't incumbent on men the same way. This is one example. So Allah Azza wa Jalla says, وَكُلُّ مُؤْمِنَاتٍ يَغْضُونَ مِنْ أَبْصَارِهِنَّ وَيَحْفَظْنَ فُجُورَهُنَّ وَلَا يُبْدِينَ زِيَنَتَهُنَّ إِلَّا مَا ظَهَرَ مِنْهَا وَيَضْرِبْنَ بِخُرُومِهِنَّ عَلَى جُنُوبِهِنَّ. So Allah Azza wa Jalla says, say to the people, O Prophet, is a command. Kul. Anytime you see the word kul, this is a direct command, not to all of the believers, but this is a direct command that Allah Azza wa Jalla has given to the Prophet, salawatullahi wa alayhi, as emphasis on what to tell the believers during his time, and speaking to us now, and speaking to all believers until the day of judgment. Say to the believing women, women, you also lower your gaze, and you protect your private parts, so that you don't have the lustful gaze, as what happened with Zulaykha in Surah Yusuf. She looked at Yusuf alayhi salam, and she had a lustful gaze. Yusuf didn't give in, and then she ended up putting like a false charge on him. This was like a Me Too thing, like over 3,000 years ago, right? She put a false charge on him, but she had lust over him, and she grabbed for him, and we know that she tore his qamis from the back and not from the front. So lower your gaze and guard your private parts, guard your desires. Then it says, and do not expose your adornments except for that what appears of, and wrap your headscarves over your bosoms, so they not expose your adornments. And then it continues to say, except for your husbands. And so this is also that as men are supposed to cover up their awrah, and so they are not attracting the lustful gaze of women, or it could be of the same gender of men who have shahwa for other men. Likewise, the woman is also supposed to cover up her awrah. So this is a reciprocal type of protection that we're supposed to have as men and women. And this especially holds true when we're fasting, that we're supposed to lower our gaze, but we're also supposed to cover up that which would help incite the lustful gaze. So men are supposed to do this, and women are supposed to do this. But Allah Azza wa Jalla, because the awrah for the woman is different, he then is more specific, and then he says, and take your headscarves and then place them ala junubihinna, and cover them up over your bosoms, because we know that of the pagan Arabs, the desert Arabs in the old days, is that and this was even related to this in the Kaaba, they would have their head covered, but they would have their breast exposed in public, right? So take some of that scarf that you have, your khimar singular, and make sure that you have your bosoms covered. So, and I know this in South Asian culture, I've seen this sometimes, that they have the scarf covering up this part right here. Well, that doesn't have to be done. It just has to be covered without cleavage being shown, right? Much less bare-chested. This is a command given by Almighty Allah Azza wa Jalla. So this is part of behave ourselves as far as lowering our gaze and also helping people lower their gaze during the fasting. And this is Hizbul Basar, as it's called. The second point of guarding the gaze, or guarding what we look at, that I want to touch on before going to the end, also in Surah Al-Hujurat, when Allah Azza wa Jal says, "La tajassasu," and don't spy on one another. So this means in general it's haram, but especially in fasting hours, if we don't want to break the spirit of our fast, we shouldn't be looking into other people's business, right? Literally, so literally it would be like if someone has the drapes open in their house or their window, and we're not like jogging by and like looking all up in their home while we're jogging or driving by or trying to look up in someone's home. We're supposed to look away. That's none of our business. Even if they left the drapes, be looking up in people's personal business in their affairs or behind what's going on behind closed doors. Likewise, we should not be looking into people's private business, right? Unless we're invited into someone's business or someone's affairs, we shouldn't be snooping and caught up in other people's matters or what they're doing. We're supposed to be in the month of fasting, more so being involved in muhasabah and self-reflection, taking self-inventory. So instead of looking into other people's business, we should be looking inward and trying to reflect on what do I need to change about myself? What is it I want to make better after Ramadan? What goals have I set to come out of Ramadan better this year than the month of Sha'ban when I came in Ramadan, or better from last year? Where did I improve on from last year's Ramadan and I accept or let it go? What do I need to do? What's my program? What's my spiritual program? What's my social program? Who am I keeping social with? Who am I keeping companionship with? Am I in any haram relations? Am I dating someone that I shouldn't be dealing with and being with them behind closed doors, or committing zina or other things? These are the things that we're supposed to be looking at. All right? These are the things we're supposed to be looking at during the month of Ramadan. And from my generation, just like I used to be an avid hip hop guy back in the day, and there used to be a rap group called Das Effects. He had a song, did a hook on an Ice Cube song called "Check Yourself Before You Wreck Yourself." But now is the time to be looking inward, that we check ourselves and look at ourselves before we wreck ourselves in this life and in the year after. So let's not be a jasus and spying and looking to other people's business. This is also part of bringing the gaze during this blessed month of Ramadan. Alhamdulillah. Now, the other part I want to get to, and this relates back to the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that our hearing is also an amana, right? So just as there is a hizbul lisan, which is a major part of the inward fast, and I'm not sure if that was discussed before, but this is one of the inward parts of the fast. We have to guard our ears. And the ears of the hearing, many spiritual doctors say that the first gateway to the soul that has the most influence on the soul is the hearing. The hearing is the first gateway to the soul. What we listen to can have a very profound and positive effect upon us, our emotional state, our spiritual state, in a very good and positive way. Conversely, that which we listen to, if we give our hearing to the wrong things, if we're actively listening to the wrong things, it can change our spiritual states. It can affect our emotional states in very profound ways. So we need to be very careful and cautious regarding what we listen to during the month of Ramadan. And I want to focus on three things. Three things. The first is guarding our ears from actually listening to al-ghiba. Al-ghiba. Al-ghiba, as mentioned in Surah Al-Hujurat, means backbiting. And let me define this term for you, ghiba, because then there's another term I'm going to get to called an-namima. So al-ghiba, what is backbiting? Backbiting is if you were to talk about someone outside of their presence, and it is something that they would not want revealed of their private business, even though it's true what you're saying, this is ghiba. Like, even if it's true, even if what it says is 100% true, if it's about someone's personal matter or something about them that they would not want revealed, that is something that they're not flaunting publicly or saying publicly, or it doesn't connect to a specific amana, this is ghiba, and this is of the kaba'ir. This is a major sin in Islam. Now, we're talking about this. There are some exceptions, but we should try to cut down small talk as much as possible during the month of Ramadan. We should be having more conversation with Allah Azza wa Jal during the month of Ramadan instead of just small talk, making dua, doing dhikr, and reading the Quran. But there are some exemptions that aren't ghiba. And what are those? Let's say that someone comes to someone and they want to marry someone, or their daughter or son want to marry someone, and then they ask you about this person. And if you know something about this, it's not flattering, but you should not cover that up. Like, you're obligated to talk about it as long as you know it's true and not a rumor. Right? It can't be fake news. It can't just be something you heard through your mind. It has sound knowledge of what you're about to relay. Then you can relay it. You can relay the truth about that, even if that's something the person didn't want to reveal. Likewise, if someone has an amana or a trust in the community, like over an organization, and there's some money involved, some sort of transaction, there's some financial malfeasance or some sort of misappropriation, and only you know that person knows, that if you talk about that, it's not ghiba. Likewise, it also relates to business. Let's say you know someone, for an example, you want to go, your car breaks down, you want to get your car fixed, and then you tell brother such and such, I'm going to Habib's to get my car fixed, for instance. But you know that you took your Habib's, or you took your Habib's, and Habib totally messed your mother's car up, and they like grossly overcharged you and fixed your car right. And it would be no fault if you mentioned that Habib basically did a ratchet job, did a bum job on fixing her car, your mom's car. And that would be ghiba, right? But this is what we mean by ghiba. Now, ghiba is very serious. And the Prophet is, now, this is what I'm hearing. The Prophet said, وَالْمُقْتَابُ وَالْمُسْتَمِعُ شَرِيكًا فِي الْإِذْنِ. The backbiter and the one who actively listens to it, they are sharikan fil idhm. They are two partners, they are two associates in the sin. And this is one of those types of things that takes two to tango, right? Like, if someone's telling you some backbiting, if you were there actively listening to it, right, then the person wouldn't at least have you to backbite someone else about, right? So actively listening to ghiba in and of itself is a sin, and it breaks the spirit of the fast, brothers and sisters in Islam. The Prophet even says, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, in a hadith that's considered to be good or hasan, he said, "Inna al-ghibata ashad min az-zina." That ghiba, backbiting, is worse than fornication. Now you say, wow, that's deep, because there's a had or a punishment given in the Quran, a worldly punishment, I mean, with proper witnesses, eyewitnesses, and a judge for zina. And of course, that punishment doesn't fit here in America. But there is no specific shari a punishment for saying something truthful about somebody that they would not want revealed about their private business, right? But what does this mean? It means that if two people are committing zina, but they make tawbah from it, and we know that there's steps to tawbah, and if they cease and desist doing it, then alhamdulillah, they say astaghfirullah, and there's a sincere Allah will forgive those two people. But as Allah is al-Ghafur, He's also al-Muqsit, He's the just. So when we commit harm against people, just saying astaghfirullah is not enough. We get forgiveness or pardon from that person. And if we don't, on the day of judgment, Allah is all just, and we'll be held account for the harm we've done to other people. When it comes to ghiba, hasanat will be taken from our book of good deeds in the right hand, and will be given to them as payment for our backbiting or any harm that we've done. One of my teachers said, there may be some people at the Day of Judgment who pray, they fast every Ramadan, but because they run their mouths about people so much and back people so much that they may give away so many of their hasanat that their book on their left hand will end up being heavier than their book in their right hand, and they will go to Jannah. We seek refuge with Allah from that. So we can't listen to the riba, right? So we're sheltering in place. This should be more simple to us right now. We're talking to someone on their phone and they're backbiting someone. We say, brother or sister, inni sa'im. I'm fasting. Inni sa'ima. I'm fasting. Let's not talk about it. But we shouldn't do that. If they keep on talking about it, you need to end the conversation. It's easier now because we're not in person, right? If you were in person, then you could, if possible, you could politely excuse yourself. If that is not possible because of social circumstance, you just try to like calm inside of your mind or like do that, like call it to yourself, try to like tune out what they're saying, right? But this is part of the guarding of the ears that we're supposed to do during this month of Ramadan, and really outside the month of Ramadan. But this is something that can break the spirit of the fast. That the backbiter and the active listener of the backbiting are two partners in the sin. It takes two to tango, as the saying goes. So this is one. And namima is the other one we should guard our hearing from. What is the difference between namima and ghiba is this. Namima is gossip, but is gossip in which falsehood is mixed in, or conjecture, or we could even say the word slander, like al-qadhf in the Arabic language, where slander, or when someone's being defamed, there's false information that's being mixed in. Likewise, we're also supposed to turn our ears away from that. And most of what people call ghiba is really namima, because when people tell stories, once it gets around to the third or fourth person, people leave out a part, or they spice it up. They throw a little spice in there. You know, they put a little hot sauce on it, right? And they spice it up some, right? And then it ends up morphing or changing. And normally it gets more spicy and gets worse as the gossip spreads. This is also blameworthy. The Prophet ﷺ gave us a warning about this. He said, "La yadkhulu jannata namam." He said that the pernicious gossiper will not enter the paradise. The pernicious gossiper, the one who always gossips all the time, ismu mubalagha, the one who's always gossiping, running their mouths about people. They're normally slandering people or bringing in fake information or bogus information, mixing in truth with falsehood, and about something that probably hurts someone's character. And this is even worse than ghiba, and this even can bring about more of a penalty. And if it's qadhf, if it's defamation of character, that it harms someone's reputation, in its lies, you can be sued for that in civil court, by the way, if you spread that and it ends up going public and it harms someone. In the Sharia, and Imam Malik is very specific about this, he actually gives a had or a punishment of flogging for the person who commits a defamation of character. So we have to be, this is not a very light thing. And we've all been involved in gossip, and we need to seek refuge from Allah from lending our ears to gossip during the month of Ramadan. And this is a characteristic of a believer, to not give their ears to gossip and vain talk. And this is mentioned in the beginning of the surah called The Believer, Surah Al-Mu'minun. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Qad aflaha al-mu'minun alladhina hum fi salatihim khashi'un walladhina hum 'an al-laghwi mu'ridun. So Allah Azza wa Jalla says that believers have already been promised success. And then he starts to describe these believers. Those in their prayer, they have khushu', they have inward humility as well as outward humility and stillness in their prayer, inward and outward reality. And those who stay away from vain talk, This is a description that Allah Azza wa Jal gives of the believers. So we turn our ears away from that. Now, in this as well, we should also, the third point I want to get to, and then I will conclude, is the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Inna Allaha la yuhibbu fuhsh," that surely God does not love profanity. So, just as we should not be speaking profanity or calling people bad names, likewise, we should not be actively listening to vulgarity and profanity. And this has two shades. First, something can be vulgar without using cuss words, but it could be in a vulgar spirit or meant to convey something vulgar. The second thing is outright profane words or vulgar words. So actively listen to that. That could mean talking with someone who you know cusses a lot, and you sit back and just keep listening to. This affects your spiritual state. If you like actively go and call that person, if you have to deal with them in a workspace or something like that, and you don't really have too much control over that. You may be able to ask politely, maybe not, about not talking that way. And that person may double down, and you have to gauge that situation. Say, "Oh, I'm sorry, Jim, I'm fasting right now. I'm sorry, Holly, I'm sorry, I'm fasting right now." But to actively call, there's some people who I know that I grew up with. I can't pick up the phone and call them under general circumstances to talk to them long, but especially during the month of Ramadan, because all they're doing is dropping F-bombs and all these types of things, right? So we're supposed to stay away from aspects of the vulgarity and the profanity, be it more vulgar without cuss words or profanity with cuss words. And this relates to music and also so-called comedy on TV, right? Like movies, Kevin Hart or Dave Chappelle and people like that, right? Who just keep on dropping profanity. That's not something to be listening to when you're fasting, right? And that's something that affects our spiritual states under regular times. So we should, we should turn off the mumble rap with the cussing, or Megan Thee Stallion, or whoever it is. Don't listen to that while you're fasting, even if it's the so-called clean version, because it's conveying stuff, it's conveying type of talk that has some sort of vulgar or profane message. It's not anything that is tayyib. Inna Allaha tayyibun la yaqbalu illa tayyiban. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, surely Allah is good and He loves wholesomeness. So we're supposed to not lean towards a fuhsh. The opposite of fuhsh is tayyib, right? We're supposed to love that which is wholesome. So we shouldn't listen to that on the radio or your Spotify or whatever. That violates the spirit of the fast, right? Likewise, watching comedy shows, watching movies during Ramadan, and especially during fasting hours, but even at night. We're supposed to say, and we're supposed to replace those things that are bad for us at night, right? So with Tarawih, with dhikr, listening to Islamic lectures like this, reading the Quran, doing something that is at least spending time with family and catching up, having some decent conversation, right? Not watching the comedy shows, all sorts of F-bombs and profanities, and women are all bees, and watching the movie, and then normally in the movie, movies like that, make sure in of something that's bad for your eyes to look at and something for your ears to listen to. So we should do this. We should do so we remove those things that are bad so that we can bring in what's good. So listen to the recitation of the Quran. Right? Listen to dua. Listen to lectures. Or listen to, if you're still driving somewhere, listen to talk radio, NPR, or whatever it is, right? But not not some music that is lewd, that's profane in actual words or in the message that it's conveying, even if it's the so-called clean version, because we know it's not clean, right? It's just the profane word is beat out, but the spirit of it's not clean. And likewise with the TV shows and the movies. And with that, I will conclude. I told Imam Tariq, Jazakallahu khairan, Allah reward you, Imam Tariq. I told him that I would stop about 10 minutes beforehand and give time if there's any questions or answers from the brothers and sisters. Barakallahu feekum.
Assalamu alaikum, Imam Dawud. I think this is, we've been hearing a lot of talks on a lot of the spiritual aspects of worship, but I think, you really made it plain and clear to us that our spirit is affected by the very physical things that we do with our eyes and our ears, things that we eat that aren't necessarily food and drink. And I think sometimes that's shocking to hear that reminder, but it's very, very much real. And I think being desensitized by being bombarded with so much. You have a question. Questions reads that I had a question about gossip. Does God forgive gossip, or is the person who you have gossiped about the one you have to ask for forgiveness? I was wondering because I was under the impression that gossip harms the other person, so it would be their right to offer forgiveness.
That is correct. That we can say astaghfirullah and try to make tawbah from the sin that we're doing, because it is told to us in the hadith, or the hadith is not strong, with Imam Shafi, Imam Malik affirmed this. He said, that faith is speech as well as speak, right? So yes, we do is we seek to reform ourselves, but when it comes to actually the person, talking about a person behind their back being the gossip or the backbiting, that they are the ones that need to forgive us as well. And Allah knows that capacity. Now, let's say we backbit someone and we're unable to ask for their forgiveness because there may be some sort of tension between you, and if you talk about them, it may cause fisticuffs or some sort of physical confrontation. Or let's say a person has passed on, you said something about them and talked about their character, and then you found out later on that what you said about them actually wasn't true. Then we know that good deeds wipe out bad deeds. So what we should then do is try to do something on behalf of the person. So what we do on behalf of that person is to give some sadaqah with the niyyah, with the intention that it is that the reward go to the person that we backed it, right? If we don't have the capacity to go and ask for their forgiveness, or if there's some sort of mitigating circumstance, or that it wouldn't be wise, that it would inflame matters more. But Allah knows best. This is what I'm talking about. That made sense. Are there any other questions? Okay, Imam Tariq, looks like there's no more questions.
I think what's happening is, once in these talks, that a lot of times when there's questions, we're getting people are reflecting on what's been shared. I mean, we know the titles of the topics. We don't know what's going to be shared. We don't know how it's going to impact us. I think also with us being sheltered in place. Okay, sorry, there's a question? Go ahead.
Okay, what does it mean in the Quran to avoid excess speech? Well, the one definition that was given is that basically, and we're talking about in the parameters of fasting. Okay, it's fine to catch up with people and have small talk with people. I mean, this is no problem. But in generally speaking, it is said that for the one who's using their tongue during the time of fasting, if they're not involved in the dhikrullah, in remembrance of God, making dua, or enjoying the good and forbidding the evil, then that their speech will most likely go into something that could be excessive during fasting, right? That we open the door if we step outside of using our tongues during fasting hours, just start talking just for the sake of talking, right? That opens the door for us. The more we talk, the more likely it is that we're going to commit a dumb or commit a sin, right? So again, there's nothing wrong with catching up with someone, catching up with a friend, family members, and checking on them. Talking about things that relate to work are absolutely unnecessary things we have to do, or giving reminders of the dean, such as I'm giving right now, which falls underneath let there be a group of people that also were here that needs to be down. And the rest of that ayat says, so it is doing good and forbidding evil. And basically, this ma'ruf has two meanings. That when we're talking about our speech, it has to be just. If we're going to talk about something, it has to be just, it has to be fair, it has to be right, or if we're calling towards justice. And the second thing is it has to be wholesome. So it can be a wholesome conversation or calling people towards wholesome behavior. That's the opposite of that, and to forbid that, or to protest against, or to place barriers in front of al-munkar. And al-munkar, the opposite of al-ma'ruf, is that we speak out against injustice, or that we speak out against or try to clarify that which is unwholesome, let people say, well, this is what you should be doing. A lot of this. There's another question. Any suggestions on strategies to avoid gossiping or media that is better alternative to consume during Ramadan, Islamic history, films, podcasts, etc.? Yes, I do. So the first is outside of your work hours. And before I actually go into the specifics on the micro level, let me start off at the macro or the big picture and the intention. That we should be people of awareness, like the word mindfulness, right? The Prophet ﷺ said, the actions of our intentions. So if we are trying to avoid gossip and backbiting, we should engage the alternative to that with the niyyah that we are doing this seeking qurb or seeking nearness to Allah Azza wa Jal. If we are seeking nearness to Allah Azza wa Jal, then we should then think about what are we engaging that is halal or recommended, and then that's going to take the place of that which is haram, or makruh, that which is despicable, or that which is munkar, right? So if we are going to enter in listening to avoiding the gossip, a lot of this becomes an act of worship. This becomes ibadah for us, right? And we will get reward for that as our Lord. So there are a ton of lectures of scholars that are giving classes and are giving reminders. So I would say, number one, that there's certain podcasts, certain classes on YouTube that you could listen to. So for instance, I listen to one every day. I take time out of my work day and listen to one friend of mine. He's in he's actually training right now. Sheikh Khalid. He's stranded in Egypt right now. So he's back to the States. And called Sabilo Community. So they have a Facebook page as well as a YouTube page. So he has 2 classes, one test and another one that comes on at 2 p.m. Eastern time. 7 days a week is on Al-Fasr Rabbani by Sayyid Abdul Qadir al-Jilani. So it's a book talking about giving a daily class, speaking to the entire book about purification. So I would say go back to that first class and listen. You can even go to listen live too as well if you want to. You can ask questions. If you go on YouTube, you can ask questions, just like you're asking questions right now. This is very beneficial. Listen to the Quran. Listen to reciters of the Quran. And the remembrance of Allah brings people's hearts. And this is what Allah is. So in our driving to work or the grocery store, instead of listening to such radio station, or instead of some things that you maybe have on your iPhone, a certain singers or rappers or whatever, just turn it off and listen to Quran. Listen to lecture that way. Talk radio. There's also it's also they put English subtitles to it. Came out, I say about 3 or 4 years ago on MBC. It's the Middle East Broadcasting Company. They did a series, and they released this during Ramadan years ago, but now it's in English, on the life of Umar ibn Khattab, and that's something that might be noteworthy. And for those of you who are Arab speakers, you can listen to it in Arabic, but they actually have it online now with English subtitles. So that's something that you can to as well. I think those are better alternatives than or whoever.
Imam Dawud, I want to say thank you for sharing and really giving us very powerful, insightful reminders. I think that with this Ramadan being the month of Quran, in us being sheltered in place, we tend to engage in the most spiritual aspects based on circumstance. But I think, this shelter in place also has an opportunity for us to purify our environments, our mental environments, by what we hear, by what we see, and what we partake in. So this is a time, inshallah, to examine that. So I think that you have really given us much to think about and much to share. And so I thank you, and I'll see if anyone has any one last question, and I'll also ask if our student leader, Ayafadullah, who's our incoming event chair for this next year, if she has anything from the board or from the community she wants to share with you. Aya, if you're talking to us, you're muted. Well, with that being said, my Hajj brother,
Alhamdulillah.
Yes, hi.
Thank you. Oh, okay.
Oh, yes. Thank you so much, Imam Walid, for your speech and for blessing us with your lecture tonight. And everybody, thank you so much for coming.
May Allah Azza wa Jal bless each and every one of you. May Allah Azza wa Jal accept all of our ruku', accept all of our sujud, accept all of our sadaqah, all of our zakat that we give during this month, accept all of our righteous deeds, accept all of our good works. May Allah love our family members and our friends. May Allah Azza wa Jal protect all of the medical professionals who are on the front lines right now during the COVID-19 pandemic. May Allah Azza wa Jal give shifa to full shifa, and may Allah Azza wa Jal give full shifa to all of the believing men and believing women in kulli da, from every single malady that they have. We ask Almighty Allah Azza wa Jal to give them shifa bit lutf, generosity, and give them well-being. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have us see the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam at the Hawd. Maybe drink from the hand of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam at the Hawd. Right, all of us and all of those we love, Jannatul Firdaus al-A'la.
Amen. Amen. Thank you all for joining us. Inshallah, we'll begin again for next week on Monday. And I believe on Monday we have Chaplain Ayla Rajid, who will be sharing with us. So again, thank you so much. I have activism.
Sure
and,
thing.
Inshallah, it's something we can do.
Sure thing.
But thank you. Thank you so much for your time. And with that, everyone, assalamu alaikum. I'll unmute everyone. If you all want to give Imam Dawud your greeting, please feel free. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.
All right, everyone's unmuting. Say assalamu alaikum, and we'll close our meeting. Assalamu alaikum.